we're going to start. Yeah, we'll start recording and then we'll go ahead and live stream. Hi, everybody.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's CARSI event. My name is Sonia Pinkney, and our special guest today is Angelique Hinson from Pennsylvania Youth Vote.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Angie. This program is being recorded, so just awareness of that. And I believe there is also closed captioning capability. Is that correct, Monica?
There is, and if it's not on for you, on the bottom, you should see the option to enable it. If you need any help, just feel free to message.
Great. So this is another one of our Let's Talk 2022 election series. Today we're going to be talking about Rock the Youth Vote. So we're going to be focused on our youth and how they can be an impact in elections this year and going forward. So just a little bit about CARSI. There we go. Just a little bit about CARSI, or the Colonial Area Anti-Racism and Social Equity Alliance. This is a small group. I think most people are aware of the organization. We're newly founded, came into being almost 2 years ago, prompted by the murder of George Floyd. CARSI is working to ensure an equitable environment in our community, and that means within the local police, within our schools, local elections on up. The vision of our organization is for the Colonial area to be united against racial injustice wherever it exists. And we believe in the democratic process and the power it has to create real change, whether it's in the halls of Congress, Harrisburg, or here at our local school board. So that is a perfect introduction to our guest tonight, Angelique Hinson, the Executive Director for Pennsylvania Youth Vote. Just a little bit about Angie for me to share with this group. And pardon me for a moment, I am having a little technical difficulty. Oops. Okay. As you can see on the screen, I've probably started reading ahead of me. It's a very impressive resume, and this organization is the brainchild of Angelique. So she is a political and community organizer and advocate for this new generation of voters. She co-founded PA Youth Vote to educate young people ages 18 to 24 on the vital issues that affect their everyday lives. And to ensure that they show up to the polls and that they choose their elected leaders wisely. She also works to empower and advocate on behalf of her community as president of the Norristown NAACP. Since making her own leap to civic engagement, Angelique has created outreach and voter and volunteer mobilization programs for the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, elected officials, and grassroots organizations. During the 2018 election cycle, she supported 6 out of 7 candidates who won statewide political campaigns. Excellent track record there. In 2020, she served as a regional youth organizer for My School Votes, an initiative of Michelle Obama's nonpartisan voter registration organization, When We All Vote, which was featured on 60 Minutes. Before transitioning into full-time advocacy, Angelique managed client services at the financial services company, Vanguard, where she monitored the quality of customer experiences of hundreds of thousands of clients. So I think, that right there shows a unique connection to understanding the experiences of others. In addition to being executive director for PA Youth Vote and president of the Norristown NAACP, Angelique is also advocating for change as a board member of Expressive Path, Community Hero, New Pennsylvania Project, of which we have Ben Gillespie on this call, and the West Norriton Democratic Committee. Angelique, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. That's a whole lot that she just read there. And, but thank you guys for having me. It does kind of speak to how I got here, my journey, and why I do the work that I do. And it's just because I grew up, poor, Black, in an underserved community. And then I went and worked in corporate America for 20 years, and I supported some of the wealthiest clients that Vanguard has in an ultra high net worth group, where we created trusts that bypass paying taxes and all of those things. And then I went and did some political organizing, and I saw that in a lot of instances, elected leaders really just pay attention to who votes, and that's who they prioritize, and they ignore the rest of the communities. And so then I started working for Michelle Obama's organization in 2020 during the most awful year ever. That's when COVID shut everything down. And I had this group of students, and teachers said to me over and over, I can register students myself. I don't have a problem getting students registered, but what is going to actually make them vote? And so that is the work that we do at PA Youth Vote. So from that, me and my co-founder, there's 4 of us, but Tom Quinn is the one that I do a lot of work with. He's a teacher out of Philadelphia School District. And so we put together a organization that really does provide that, why voting matters for students. And so I'm super excited. It's the most gratifying work I've ever done in my life. I've never worked this hard ever, but I've never enjoyed or felt like my work was more meaningful. And so, I can just tell you a little bit about the organization, and I'll try to get through it real fast so you have time for questions. We are nonpartisan. We're a collaboration of students, educators, organizations, really working to lift up student voices and empower young people as civic actors, registered, informed, and ready to vote in all elections. Like I said, it's important for us at PA Youth Vote, not just to make sure students are registered, but for them to understand why voting matters. And so what we do is we spend a lot of time connecting students and issues they care about to local elections, right? So, as we went through 2020, that I promise you, I don't think it was awful, but it provided a great civics lesson for people, because as we started to talk about all these policies that created inequities, right? Most of them, or a lot of them, were tied to locally elected officials, right? And so, when you're looking at your school, whether there's diversity, equity in your staff, or, do you have curriculum? That's your school board, right? If you're talking about criminal justice reform, right? Like, you need to look at who your DA is, right? And so all of these things were playing out real time, and I was able to connect with local officials. And so what we really do is we focus on local elections as opposed to just national elections, right? We make sure they understand there are elections every 6 months, and we should be voting in every one of them, right? And then after we vote, we need to hold all elected officials accountable. That's the other big thing we really do, is we teach young people how to use their voices constructively to advocate for changes they want to see. So, for example, I'm going to brag on my students a little bit, because for the past 3 years, there has been an effort in, Philadelphia. We hear people say all the time, young people don't vote, right? But the reality is we're not consistently teaching young people why they should vote, right? Like, they have no idea. Government, a lot of times in places like Norristown or Pottstown, where the turnout is lower, it's because government hasn't worked for them. So they really just don't even understand why voting matters. And so we have been talking to this Philadelphia School District about trying to get a policy that not just focused on making sure students were registered, but also that they would be educated on voting, right? And so it's been like 3 years. Students have been going and testifying year after year. And Thursday night, we had 2 more students testify, and I testified. And after all that, we were able to get the policy voted in unanimously on Thursday night. And so now Philadelphia School District is leading the way, and they are going to be providing this information to students. And we partner very much with the Philadelphia School District as an organization. And so that's the work that we can do with, you know, school districts out here in the suburbs, really trying to provide that partnership. And so we have a whole bunch of resources that we provide for teachers.
So Angie, before we go there, that's excellent, an excellent next point to get to, because I want to get there, but I want to pause on that for a second, because two things struck out for me. One is 3 years, okay? So it took 3 years for the School District of Philadelphia to implement voter civics education and voter registration on a district-wide level. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, I will say, though, I do think why it got passed now is because PAU vote and you know, has been rallying up a lot of troops over this last year. And so more students have been coming and testifying. Like almost every month we've had students go and testify to the school board. And then we've also done a lot of work in partnership with the school district. So I think, you know, they understand, you know, I have to say for teachers, right, in fairness, teachers do have a lot going on, right? And so it is,
especially with COVID being the past 2 of our 3 years, when you think about it.
Yeah, it has been awful for teachers. And I've had teachers that said to me, I care very much about this, but literally, I am just trying to help my kids survive in some of the schools, neighborhood schools in Philadelphia, where it's just extremely, you know, impoverished, right? They have housing insecurity, food insecurity, all those things that they're dealing with. So this is one more thing, but through our partnership with the school district, we were also able to get them to pay a person at every high school. Now, mind you, Philadelphia has 60 high schools, just in the public high schools, right? And so, but they pay somebody now that will do the work, right? And then the students do the most of the work. And so, you know, understanding that, I think, and then again, with this pressure, I think finally they said, okay, let's just, this makes sense now at this point.
So the other thing I wanted to touch on with what you said are the student testimonies. What are some of the things that you heard from students as far as why this would be beneficial for them?
So I'll tell you, last summer, because Philadelphia has a program where they pay young people from all over the city. It's like a work program in the summer work program. And so we were able to serve as a work site last year. And so what we did was we created a forum theater presentation. And so students got paid really to help us develop a play. And the play was called, How's Your Voice Gonna Matter If You Don't Vote? And it really had students basically acting out themselves as if they were setting up a voter registration table, right? Which is what we do. And we had like all these like really cool things made up. And then they were trying to register other students that were going to a concert, other young people going to a concert. And so when they presented it to the students would say, you know, give resistance. And then they would kind of talk to that resistance and try to help them understand why, you know, they still, you know, would be more impactful to continue to make sure that their voices are heard. And then ultimately we got some students to be part of that program simply because they were looking for a job, right? And so they weren't necessarily students that were drawn to civics. And so one of the students that we had came the last day we did our culminating project was in front of the administration building in Philadelphia on Broad Street, right before the first school board meeting of the year. And we had 5 students go in and testify to the school board directly after that, one after another. It was like the most incredible day ever. But this one student's testimony was, he is a first-generation American and his parents are not able to vote. So they've never had conversations about voting. And he had no idea how important this really was, or how it plays a part in really trying to deal with a lot of this inequality and inequity that we see in, you know, our, you know, communities and in our country. And so now, having participated, you know, he understands the importance of this work. And it was just so powerful. And a lot of the students have said that, like, basically it wasn't something they talk about, because a lot of them come from these communities, again, where government hasn't worked. And so it's not something that people even look to anymore to be the solution. And this provides, again, that why, which really, I think, once they learn. So for example, I'll never forget, I had these students the day that the DA decided to announce that he was not going to charge the police that killed Breonna Taylor. And it was devastating because most of the girls that I have, they're mostly Black and brown girls at that time. And so they were just defeated and devastated. But I was able to say to them in that moment, as awful as this is, right? That DA who didn't value Breonna Taylor's life enough to charge the people that took it is an elected official. And so now that community can go out and they can organize, they can mobilize, and they can vote somebody in that will value Black lives and that will get justice for Breonna Taylor's family, which is what they did in the Mike Brown situation. And instantly, right, it goes back to them feeling empowered by the work that they're doing. And so they become true ambassadors for voting.
Yeah, that's so important, I think, for our youth to feel empowered, to have that resiliency, to know that they can make a difference in the world around them, and what an important way to do it. And it also makes me think about, how many of us have had experiences that taught us something, right? Whether it was a first job, whether it was, your parents' discipline to clean your room, something that you did not because you really wanted a clean room, but you wanted that job. And so you learned responsibility, showing up every day. You got so much else from it. So a question in the chat is around the Philadelphia School District program. So what does that look like? Is it a required course? Will it be structured? Will there be structured opportunities for all students to register to vote? Are there school-wide meetings? How is that going to look?
So again, there are voter champions that right now are currently already being paid to do this work. And so basically the model that we have created is that, the teachers will be able to download a list, right? Or that voter champion, it's called, will download a list. And so they'll know by the dates of birth exactly who is, as far as their age is concerned, eligible to register, right? And then they will narrow it down to students, right? And like email. And then they will work with a team of students, right? They usually have like a voter registration club who then actually goes into advisories, homerooms, things like that, and does the actual registration. Now, we have provided, my co-founder, Tom Quinn, like I said, he is a teacher, so he actually created curriculum for them, which is available on our website. You can see it there. But there's curriculum that now they teach in the fall. And it is like the history of voting rights. It talks about, how to vote by mail. All of those things are included in the curriculum. Now, I imagine it will be even more robust next year. But at that point, this is kind of the model. It's like, again, it's really empowering students to do this work. But then they need the teacher because you are going to have to pull students like date of birth and all that. And so the teacher should own that, right? And then the students are the ones that are doing a lot of the registration and taking it off the plates of the teachers, which is great because teachers already have too much going on anyway.
Great, thank you.
Somebody made a comment about empowerment. I will say too, just speaking to that, because we do focus on, right, using your voice. And so the testimony that the students have done for school board, they've done it for this policy, but they've also went in and testified about wanting, more diversity. And even last year, they weren't going to have a prom, and they pushed back and got a petition, and they signed that, and then they got their prom too. So they are learning how to use their voices to just, advocate for themselves in all different spaces, which is so important as they go off, like their high school, they're going into college. And so one of my students was at Howard. I don't know if you guys saw the recent protests they've had. She was part of that because of the housing situation. And then one of my other students is at West Point. And she actually had a teacher where she felt like she experienced his lesson, there was racism, and she went to the administration and talked to them about that and had a conversation with him, and he apologized. And so they're learning how to, again, empowerment, how to use their voices in a constructive way, but to make change, because we all know that like voting isn't the end all be all, right? We vote, but then we have to hold people accountable too, to push them to ultimately make the changes that we want to see.
So let's talk about resources. In addition to the format that, or the structure that you provide schools as far as the curricula option, and then also the format for how to embed it into the program, for example, going to learning centers, et cetera, that shared time for registration. What other resources does PA Youth Vote help to provide the schools in order to bring this program in?
So basically,
I'm thinking about like some materials or tools, like how do you actually register the students? Is this on a personal laptop? How is that done?
So we work off of tablets. And so the tablets are really amazing, because of the app that it was created in partnership with Rock the Vote and the Department of State. And so basically it enables students, because many of them don't often, especially in Philadelphia, didn't have a driver's license. So that was a huge barrier for them to actually register. And so this app allows them to just complete the registration process even without that, because they can sign directly on the tablet, right, with their finger. And so we have links that we have created, and in all the schools in Philadelphia, each have their own link, which has their name on it. And then they have QR codes with their schools like logo on it and the colors of their schools that they post up everywhere. And then we have toolkits that we provide for the students to use, and it has links to all kinds of information. So it has links for registration. It has links for if someone needs a mail-in application, links for if students don't know who, is on the ballot, right? We have nonpartisan links, Committee of 70, League of Women Voters, that is on this document. It's called a strategies for high school voter registration clubs. And that is all provided as well. So the students have basically all the tools they need to get the information. We also have links on there if they want to do candidate interviews, because we partner with Committee of 70, and they do different candidate interviews, and the Governor's Engagement Award. I don't know if you guys all know about that, but there's a Governor's Engagement, Civic Engagement Award. And if you register, your school registers up to 65% of your eligible population, you can get a bronze, and then it goes up to silver and gold. And the governor's office will come out and give you a plaque and recognize you, so you can make it like a whole big celebration. And so there's also links for that. But the document is like a tool that provides, access to all kinds of information that the students would need to register, and students that are being registered potentially would need as well.
Yeah, and the students that are doing the registering have all of this information to then be able to inform, educate themselves about the issues, and talk to other voters about the issues as well.
Yep. And
Right.
so if you wanted to have candidates come to the school, you could work with Committee of 7. We can work, and have like local candidates that are running, come out and talk to the students, because they should answer students' questions. Students have things they care about. Young people have things they care very much about. And this gives them an opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, this is great. So I think there is one more question. How would you suggest, actually, I have another question after this. So I'm going to pair my question with Monica's a bit. Is we know that Philadelphia was your recent success. Are there other areas where you're seeing success with this program? And then to Monica's question, how would you suggest if our district was interested in participating in this program or you leveraging your tools and partnering with you, how would you suggest to start that process? So 2 questions there.
So first I'll say primarily we've been only in Philadelphia because with COVID, it was hard to get into schools. And so this is the first time we're actually coming out. I'm from the suburbs, I'm from Norristown. So it's very important for me to get out here and start working with students. So we are right now working with Lower Merion. There's 2 schools over there, Norristown. And again, they have our policy. So I think they're going to be the next to pass it. I'm going to be working in the Cheltenham area, and then also Pottstown. I talked to the teacher from Pottstown today. And so to get started, basically, really, we just need to know if there's an existing club or if they need to start a club. And this document that I talked about really gives the steps if they need to start one. If they need to start one, the teacher just needs to sponsor the club, right? Basically saying that they will, sponsor the club. Again, they would be the person that owns the data. And then I will work directly, or our organization will work directly with the students to give them the training that they need. And honestly, like the students do the bulk of this because it's peer-to-peer registration. That's also what's most impactful, is when you have other students kind of doing this work, engaging students, one-on-one year-round. That is the most effective. And so we've seen success like up to 90% in schools that follow this model.
Right. So you've seen schools get that governor's award multiple times as new students reach voting age.
Yep. And it's really cool. And you can be really, as we're going into the spring, there's really cool ways too, right? Because COVID, we had to get creative. So for instance, they did a book pickup for all the seniors one day. And so it was like the most amazing thing because the QR codes, we taped them up on the corners of the tent, right? And literally there was a picture of like students everywhere with their phones out. And it looks like they're just on their phones playing around, but they're all registering to vote. And we got like 60 kids registered in that one day. It was like amazing. Cool.
That's very awesome. So we tried to keep this to a 20 to 30 minute high level conversation. This is an awesome topic. This is an awesome cause. This is one that CARSI supports. That will make a significant impact in this upcoming election, as we know is very critical here in Pennsylvania.
Can I say something on that too? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Circle, who does a lot of data on civic engagement, has done the data, and they have declared that Pennsylvania will be number 1 for both the governor's and the Senate race for youth influence having the most impact. So young people are going to make some noise this year, guys. And so we got to make sure they're registered and ready to do it.
Yeah. I mean, how many of us in the past few years, election cycles on the local and national level, have felt just a huge, overwhelming feeling of joy from having been a part, right, of the elections, however they turn out, but just, being actively engaged. I know it's meant so much to me personally. So I would love to share that with the students in our community.
We started working so Norristown has been doing, because we do a little advocacy work too for issues that are impactful for students. So we've also written curriculum for the fair funding issue, that lawsuit that's out right now, and provided it for teachers. So it's at grade levels 3rd through 12th to explain that issue to students. And we've had some of the students from Norristown, which is severely underfunded, have done some events, virtual events, just kind of using their voice again, that, holding people accountable and using your voice to advocate for change. So they've done a lot of that. Also, a lot of the students, we get calls all the time for the students to talk to the press about, why they're voting. So some of our students have kind of elevated themselves to like real organizers, where they're out here speaking on virtual events. And we've done events with League of Women Voters. And so that's another cool aspect for students that really, really love this work too.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. Angelique has put her information in the chat. If anyone has any additional questions, I assume that's what that's for. They can reach out to you if they'd like to learn more about the organization. The
Yeah,
website is also in the chat.
please.
Carthy will continue to do our Let's Talk election series, and we will also continue to work on voter engagement and voter registration. Melissa Livney is on, who is leading some of the voter work within our organization around text banking, canvassing, and a number of other opportunities. So please stay tuned for further information about upcoming events around that. If there are no other questions, we are at 8:33. So I'm going to say, Angie, thank you so very
Thank you
much
all
for the
so
work that
much.
you do and for your
You reach
time.
out, I can share all of those documents I mentioned with you so you can see them yourselves. I think you'll be very pleased with what you see. It's an amazing thing. And some of the kids' confidence has grown so much from just working with us. Where they came to us, they could barely would speak in public. And now, like I said, they're on panels and they're doing amazing
Powerful.
things.
They're our leaders. Thank you. Good night,
Thank
all.
you guys. Good night.
And Monica, you can stop the recording.